by for Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Hey, this is Luke Holmes.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
We have crossed into the 7th month of the year. That means that Janet and Brian, we are getting closer and closer to that 4th of July celebration. And a lot of folks going to hit the water. And then a couple of days after that, the drawing will happen for the second drawing of the big tags. And then a couple of weeks later, then it'll be over the counter. And it's just a busy time of year.
I don't think it ever ends anymore, Drew. And really, we have only had a handful of days that have been, warm and boating weather. And so we just want to remind folks that as the summer does start to warm up and we are getting out more and more fishing and just recreation boating, that there are a lot of things that we need to be thinking about safety-wise and making sure our boats are up and running, ready to go.
Last weekend I was at Glendo doing some fishing, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, it was fine. There wasn't a whole lot of boat traffic, but by 8:30, it was like rush hour traffic with the number of boats, fishing and pleasure boats, as well as jet skis. And it kind of gets a little sketchy and scary when you're out on a big body of water like that.
It absolutely does, especially when you recognize that many of those boat owners or watercraft owners are new and maybe don't know some of the rules and regulations behind which side of the water they should be on or how they should be operating their craft.
A lot of boaters were, they're pulling skis and they're pulling tubes. And, well, that seems like that gets kind of sketchy when you're on a big body of water and they're doing it right out in the middle. Brian, what are some of the thought processes that people should go through when they're pulling somebody on a boat like that with a ski?
Well, I think, safety equipment's number one. Making sure that you have the right type of life jacket if you're on a water ski or a jet ski or in a boat, but also having somebody in the boat that'll actually be able to be one of your spotters, guy with if the person goes down on the skier, they can hold up their orange flag to make sure other boats are aware that you have somebody that you're pulling, and also having that rear view mirror if you're alone in the boat with somebody you're skiing with, and being able to watch that person back there at all times and having that orange flag to throw up in the air if you actually have that person fall off their water skis.
And you mentioned the life jackets, which it's so important and it's a rule, you have to have a life jacket for every person in the boat, and then you have to have the square flotation device. What about somebody that's on a jet ski and they're pulling somebody on a tube? What is the life jacket regulation on something like that?
Having somebody on a jet ski, they have to have a specific life jacket for a jet ski. So you can imagine falling off a jet ski going, 40, 50 mile an hour. Your life jacket has to be able to, withstand that falling off at that speed and not falling off of you to keep you up, when you finally come to rest type of thing. So it's very important. Looking on the inside of your your PFD, to make sure that is the required life vest for that. So, and if you are pulling somebody with your jet ski, you have to have another person on board with you. So it's got to be a 2-person. So you have to be able to identify when that person goes down on the skis or on the tube, so you can hold up the orange flag. So we still know that's pretty important.
We were out just this past weekend, and with the colder weather so far this summer, the water is still very chilly. And so while people might think that they're fantastic swimmers and maybe they just have their life jackets on the boat with them and maybe they don't have them on, it's just a reminder that if the wind comes up and something happens and they fall in the water, that water is so incredibly cold that, it takes your breath away. Maybe you start gasping. Those sorts of things kind of happen this time of year still. So it's always great just to have those life jackets on. Don't forget, kids 12 years of age and under are required to wear a life jacket while the watercraft is underway. But even be thinking as an adult, if you're responsible for other people on the watercraft, life jackets are not a bad way to go.
Game and Fish will randomly do, test and checks to make sure that people have everything that you need on the boat, a lot of times you'll show the life jackets and then you'll put it in a compartment, just to say that you have it. But really, you should have it within reach if you're not going to have it on the whole time.
I totally agree, Drew. I mean, the water temperature is a big thing, and just, you hit a wave, somebody goes by you really fast and rocks your boat really good and somebody falls out and you're going down the water. You got to turn around and come back. That person is in the water by themselves with a life jacket. It gets pretty scary when the water's that cold, but just for somebody that you just don't know what their swimming ability is, at that time, if you're not used to being on a boat, maybe it's a good idea to ask people if they're new to your boat, if they would rather wear a life jacket, if something would happen. I think it's a really good thing, especially if it's your boat and you're responsible for those people.
And just as a reminder, we all think back to those horrible orange around the neck, uncomfortable life jackets that we maybe used to have when we were kids. But there are so many fantastic flotation devices out there now that, you don't even know that you're wearing one.
And also other safety equipment that needs to be on the boat at all times. I mean, obviously the life jackets, but then there's really a pretty good list of things that legally you have to have on the boat.
Yeah, I think, like fire extinguishers and making sure that fire extinguisher is actually active. It's in the green, the dial shows it's in the green. And like say, if it's really old, it might be a good idea to get a new one. They're not that expensive. They're easy to find at a lot of the stores at your, especially in Casper. And then also making sure that your lights work. What happens if you end up after sunset and you're out and you got to have your lights on? Make sure that they work before you go out on the water. That's a really good thing. Having a horn or something like that is actually really important. Like to warn other boats from, getting too close or, emergency situations. That's really important. So I think some of those things, besides having your boat registered, some of those things that we come across that will pull you over for if you don't have the registration on your boat. It's like, we got to find out, what's going on with your boat and stuff. So make sure you have the safety equipment. And you talked about that throwable device that you have to have, the square cushion with the straps on it, or one of those ring buoys. Those are perfect for if somebody falls in the water. You can throw that out to them, and having a throw rope that comes in a bag that you can throw it is great to have too. It's just one of those things where it's not just you that's in the boat, it's all those other folks, but it's also all those other people on the body of water that you assume know what they're doing on the body of water, but you'd be surprised how many are new boat owners and really aren't aware of how dangerous it can be and what's going on with the water at all times.
Wyoming Game and Fish, go to their website, wgfd.wyo.gov. If you are a new boater, there are boater classes that you can take, and most of them are specifically just online, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, they are online now, and it really is. It's one of those things where if you aren't a boat operator or you're just not doing it very often, it's something that give you a break on your insurance, but also it actually helps you be more aware of your surroundings when you're boating. And Drew, you would be surprised how many new boats people buy in Casper. Just yesterday, we registered 18 new boats just in one day. So it's one of those things where there is a lot of new boat owners out there. So being aware of what's going on outside of where you're on your boat is very important. Always assume that the person that's in a boat next to you has no clue what the rules are. So just watch out for other people when you're on the body of water, just for your own safety.
And then obviously one of the things we've talked about a lot here, if you're a new boat owner, you have to get the AIS. If you haven't taken your boat out for a year, you have to get that inspection. And every time you hit the water, if you take the boat home, every time, if it's open, you got to go.
Yeah, I think AIS stuff is kind of important. People get confused. If that boat was in another state or outside the state of Wyoming in the last year, they have to be inspected again before they go on the water in Wyoming. Now, if you're Alcova bound every weekend, you still have to stop at an AIS check station if you drive by it, but you don't have to get it inspected, before you go out on the water. If it stays in Wyoming, please stop at one of those check stations to make sure they know that your boat has stayed in the state for the past year and they'll let you go. Certainly not only boats, but your kayaks and your canoes. Every year you have to have an AIS sticker for that. Make sure your registration for your boats are up to date. And if you don't know what it is, go look at your sticker on your boat. If it says 23 or later, you're good to go. But if it has a earlier sticker on it, like 22 or 21, it's time to get it re-registered. And it's a pretty simple process. You can do it online, or you can just come to the Game and Fish office, and we'd be glad to help you out. It takes just a couple minutes, and you're out the door.
WGFD.wyo.gov, a great resource for boating information, boater safety information, and get over and check that all out there. When we come back, we're going to talk about the next round of draws for big game hunting here in Wyoming.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
And we are back. Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors. Remember, you can go to wgfd.wyo.gov. Fishing and boating is the section there. And one quick factor we wanted to bring up is it's 4th of July weekend, 4th of July week, so easy on the booze. You can still get a ticket for boating under the influence, and you could cause some major issues. If you remember last year, there were some newsworthy incidents that happened that we want to avoid this year. So make sure you go and know what you're allowed to do. All right, so we're past the 4th of July weekend now, and it's time for the secondary draw results, Brian. And I know we were kind of a couple of weeks ago, people were just getting to the application process, and that has passed, and now it's time for the drawing, which will be at the end of the week.
Yeah, so July 6th, the results of that leftover drawing will be out. And like say, after the leftover drawing, everybody finds out, if they drew or not. And then after that, come July 12th is when everything that is left over from both drawings is available first come, first serve. And what that means is that you can purchase those licenses that are still available online, or you can come to your license selling agent or your Game and Fish office and purchase those first come, first serve. So if there's a cow license that is still available, like in Area 48 we talked about, Drew, you can pick those up first come, first serve. And like I say, they're open for everybody, residents and non-residents. And don't forget about, that's when you can start buying your general deer and your general elk licenses too. And like I say, you can buy any of those licenses from the 12th of July all the way until the end of the hunting seasons in those hunt areas.
So when you talk about the general licenses, are those different than the over-the-counter licenses? I know that there's maybe a little confusion on, well, if I just go over the counter, then I'll get the deer or elk tag that I want, but it is separate.
Yeah, it is. So the first come, first serve is your limited quota licenses. So those licenses that are limited in number. All of antelope are limited quota licenses. There's certainly some deer areas in the state that are limited quota, limited numbers, and there's certainly a lot of elk licenses that are limited quota. But also, like you say, in your general, so a resident hunter, a resident of Wyoming can buy a general elk or deer license and hunt in any general license area in the state. Now, a non-resident, they can't do that, but a resident can. A non-resident actually has to draw a general elk license. And they don't have general deer licenses. They have region licenses, which restricts them to a certain region. So it's confusing is all I can say for a lot of new people. But like I say, if you have questions about what these all mean, call your local game warden, your local biologist, or your Game and Fish office, and we'd be glad to help you out, get things straightened out. And actually, if you don't know where to go hunting and things like that, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you out and get you set up so you can actually have a successful hunt this fall.
And I've talked to a couple of people that are like, yeah, I didn't get a draw, and in the first round, and I didn't even put in on the leftover. But this is where they can still hunt. They're not shut out for the year if they go and they can get in on these licenses. So that's not the case at all. And it's very, worth your time to at least go to wgfd.wyo.gov on the hunting section and figure that out.
Yeah, I think on July 6th, after the drawing's over, that list will be out of what licenses are going to be first come, first serve come July 12th. So make sure you get on and look at that. If you can't find it, just call us. You can stop by the office. We'll have them printed out. You can look at them. And we're here to help you out. And yeah, you can still hunt this fall if you didn't get in the drawings. You can buy general deer, general elk. You can go down to the snowies, to hunt elk, or the bighorns to hunt elk on a general elk. Or there's a lot of general elk licenses areas out in the western part of the state. And there's also general deer licenses available too. So like I say, we're here to help you out. If you don't have a place to go, we'd be glad to help and steer you in the right direction.
And we talked last week that some folks are forgetting about their preference points, which you have to buy that separately now. That doesn't come with your license.
That's right. So preference points, you can start buying them in July. And remember, they do not automatically get onto your preference points. You don't get them automatically like you had in the past. It's been quite a few years now where you actually had to buy them separately. They're just totally separate from the license process now. So starting in July through October, you purchase your preference points. And preference points for residents, that is for moose and sheep. And that's it. And the rest of those are your non-resident friends and relatives. That's for all the critters like elk, deer, and antelope, and moose and sheep. So for non-residents, a little bit more important because elk, deer, and antelope preference points are really important for the opportunities to draw in more areas in the state. So those are the two separate ones that you have to buy your preference points for, residents and non-residents for those critters.
And the super tag is still up there as well. So, get over and check it out. If you haven't gone to your portal yet, you have missed the draw, the first one anyway, if you haven't gone there yet.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But it can be challenging. And so if you are not familiar with the portal yet and you just need to get signed up, don't hesitate to holler.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
Welcome to July, Brian. We are looking at that tornado month behind us.
Let's hope.
Every year, we average 12 tornadic storms. This year, in June alone, 27.
Sounds about right.
How crazy has it been? The weather the entire year has really been odd because we started out with snow, and we had blizzards, and we have 3 feet of snow, and I assume that the wildlife and the fish and everything are confused as heck about what's happening right now.
I know a lot of us are. So I mean, all this rain, and I mean the late winter that we kind of had, and it's definitely making us do some things that we didn't normally do this time of year.
But one thing that is happening right now, that the fish bite for walleye is really hot right now, especially at Glendo.
Yeah, it's been great at Glendo for the last couple months, and hearing some pretty good stories about some good fish coming out of Alcova and Pathfinder both.
Yeah, and it's good to see that. I mean, these waters they've been low the last couple of years, and now almost to normal. I think it's almost 100% at Glendo.
Yeah, it's 96 and holding. So yeah, they're managing the water. From what I can say, is pretty darn good, especially with the challenges they've had with the amount of rain and fortunately, I think we've had some cooler nights, so that's kind of slowed some of the runoff and the snow melt down. So if we didn't have that, coupled with all the rain that we've had, we could have been ugly. Yeah,
it really could have. But like we did mention, the fishing is really hot right now, and live bait, those night crawlers, those leeches have been just crazy hot.
It's the year of the worm.
Yeah, it is. We were at Glendo a couple of weeks ago, and we were sitting with a worm on a jig, and then we would do a slip bobber with a leech, and they would both hit.
Right.
But if you used a leech on the jig, it wouldn't hit as much as it would on the slip bobber. It's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, to me, like that, a slip bobber and a leech is about the most natural presentation you can get, and so if you just take a leech and throw it overboard and just watch it swim away, it's very natural, just kind of like a snake in the water kind of deal. And when you put them on just a bare hook under a bobber, I mean, they do the same thing. They're just kind of down there swimming around, and man, pretty enticing for a big old walleye.
I assume that's right. And, I think I've even heard that we went through a slow period with the river and trout fishing, but the last couple of days I've heard some good stories about some fish.
Yeah, I think once, it just has to settle down. Like, we have to stop having so much rain in the afternoon that's muddying up that river. And once all that kind of just settles down and water clears up again, the fishing is going to be fantastic.
We're just 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks, a little under 2 weeks away from your next round of the Wyoming Walleye Stampede.
Yep.
And it's at Seminole, and things, hopefully the weather kind of holds off a little bit,
That's always a factor when we're fishing, especially these lakes that are a little higher elevation and big bodies of water. When that wind comes up, we tend to get some potential for some big waves, and guys have to be cautious and know the limitations of their own boats.
So we've been talking a lot about you have this coming week, or I guess this coming round, and then you'll be over at Boysen. Have you heard much about how the fishing's going over there?
Yeah, Boysen's fishing pretty good right now. It too has had a lot of water coming through there. I mean, I think up to 12, 13,000 cubic feet going in there, and then they're pulling it out. So this last week it was up in the floodplains like 20%, 10%, something like that. So the water's getting into campgrounds up on Tough Creek. And the fishing, the fish kind of do some different things. Guys are finding fish suspended, which is not really that common for walleyes in our area. Most guys like fishing shorelines and that shallower stuff. But I know guys that have been out there hunting for trout and pulling some walleyes in with those trout.
So it really is just shooting fish in a barrel at this point.
Well, it's not always that easy, but you have to be versatile. I think if you just really just love jig fishing all the time, you might have to switch over to jigging a worm, or maybe it's going to be a crankbait bite, or maybe you have to put on a bottom bouncer and a worm harness. So be versatile. Don't be so stuck in your ways. If you want to put fish in the frying pan, then you're gonna have to change it up sometimes.
I've been doing this clean eating thing, and that's one of the hardest thing when you're having fish, because the best is deep fry that sucker.
Right.
But with walleye though, you can eat it and not even really have to put too much batter and anything on that. It is such a good eating fish.
Yeah, we've even been doing some recipes on the Traeger, just a little bit of butter, or in your case, maybe some spray Pam, and some lemon and maybe an onion on top, and just throw it in the Traeger. And it doesn't take very long. That white meat is nice and light. So, 15 minutes in a Traeger. It really comes out pretty good. Which
right now you guys have a whole line of Traegers. You brought in the Pit Boss, and you've even got the smaller kind of tailgate smokers.
Yeah, we've got a lot of options right now, especially for a guy who just wants to go away for a weekend, or if it's a guy out on a rig and they're out of town and living out of hotels. I mean, those little those Traeger Rangers and some of these little Pit Boss, they've got some portable smokers that, great for a couple steaks.
And we're into the grilly month. It's actual grilly month, and if you're throwing those walleye on the Traeger, do you have a preference when it comes to the smoke? The flavor of smoke, or? A
lot of guys will run more of like a mesquite type of a pellet, but for the most part, you're not cooking them for a real long, lengthy time, so it's not really getting into the meat that much. But there are a couple seasonings that I like. There's one called a fin and feather, and that one's actually real tasty on those fish.
Well, it's in the name, so
it's
probably made just for that.
Right.
It probably does it right on. Now, camping. Obviously, we're into summertime now, and camping options here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. You guys have it all.
Yeah, we're still hot and heavy into the green gas, the little propane, the little 2-burner stoves, to make your coffee and eggs in the morning, and then of course all the cots and pads and tents and sleeping bags and everything that you would need to just put a full trip together.
So come on by and check them out here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And a little earlier in the show, we talked to Game and Fish about how the leftover drawing is coming up, and then after that, it's all over the counter.
Right.
And Rocky Mountain Discount Sports is one of the outlets that people can come in and get their license.
Yeah, so once this secondary draw goes, if there is leftover tags, you'll be able to get on the Game and Fish website and see how many tags are available. So come in and know what you're looking for. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Is guy just says, I want whatever's left over for a cow-calf tag. We can't really help you with identifying areas for you. But if there's a couple hundred tags left over in Area 7 and it's a 7-6 tag, we can look that up pretty easily and allocate that tag to you. Just have a plan when you come in and, go from there.
Well, this week is a good week to maybe come in and start checking it out, because this will be rolling and we'll be into hunting season before you know it, Brian.
It's going quick, so it'll be here before long.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
We're back here at Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors. Hey there, it's Drew, and on the line, Sean Blazak with the Mule Deer Foundation. And Sean, you guys have had quite the year. It's been really busy. You've been doing a lot of things on the ground so far this summer, but things are looking a little different with some of the mule deer herds around the state.
Yeah, some of the mule deer herds, as everyone knows, took quite a beating over this winter. We had a lot of heavy snows in their winter ranges, and we lost quite a few mule deer. And that's one of those things that unfortunately happens from time to time. But Mule Deer Foundation, our big goal is to make sure the habitat and where mule deer are moving and everything else for mule deer is as best possible so they can rebound quickly. At this point, that's our best bet, is to make sure they can rebound as best possible. Now, the whole state didn't take a beating, but especially that sort of L around the outside edge of the state on the west edge and the southern edge took a pretty bad beating this year. So we're looking forward to those deer doing well in the future. And this really wet spring will help deer because it's obviously putting more vegetation on the ground. So that's a good thing, even though it, ruins some people's summer plan. It's always good for wildlife to get more grass and stuff on the ground. So we'll see how this next winter goes. Hopefully it's a much lighter winter and, mule deer will have good numbers of fawns and we can start rebuilding those herds a little bit.
When you guys are doing, hands-on things this summer, I mean, obviously the weather's probably played havoc on your plans for doing any projects, but I'm sure you're able to get some stuff in. And if you drive around the state at all, you see a lot of the fencing projects and projects on habitat that you guys have really been working on. Have there been any big ones this year that you guys are really focused on right now?
There's not a bunch that we're specifically focused on. We sort of have it spread out between fencing and habitat projects. Over the last 2 years, we've spent over $250,000 straight MDF money on the ground in the state. And, matching that, it's a much, much higher number because most of our projects have pretty good match rates. So we're working on that stuff. We do have 2 wire winders now in the state that are available to all our partners, including Game and Fish, other nonprofits, Forest Service, BLM, anyone who's doing stuff to convert unwildlife-friendly fences to wildlife-friendly fences or remove fences. So those are 2 big assets for us that we get to loan out to people too and, help out. And then, getting volunteers on the ground, fence removal and fence modification is one of those things that's easy for volunteers to do. So we've got a lot of those days coming up this summer. We'll also be doing some different plantings and stuff coming up soon that we'll have volunteers for as well. And then, of course, we have different fundraising events going too, just so we can get more funds on the ground and, work an even greater amount with our partners such as Game and Fish.
Yeah, which is a great point because, you guys do fundraising all year long. You have your banquets through banquet season and all kinds of little get-togethers that go to raise money. And just what you said, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent over, years of making the habitat even better. And when you guys are doing these fencing projects, what seems to be the best method that you guys are taking on? And when you're replacing fence, are you making them any different than the fences that were there previously?
Yeah, so knowing that fences are required for a lot of livestock operations, we just try to make most of them as good as we can. Obviously, removing fences is good, but having fences also can be good because you get proper livestock rotation, which actually helps the habitat for mule deer. But that being said, we want those fences to be as wildlife friendly as possible, aka easier to go across. So what we typically do is we'll take a fence that's no longer containing sheep and now is to cattle or something, and we'll take out that woven wire at the bottom and replace it with like a 3-strand fence with a lower top wire and then a smooth wire on the bottom that's a little bit higher than normal so fawns and stuff can get through. So that's one of the big modifications. And, and even if it didn't have woven wire at the bottom, a lot of older fences are 4, 5-strand fences, or even if they're 3 strands, the wire spacing is just wrong for letting wildlife through easy. So we'll just replace some strands and move some strands. So a lot of these fence projects, we're just moving that top strand, maybe not even replacing it, replacing the bottom strand with a smooth wire. And then that makes that fence very easy for wildlife to get through, but it still provides a good fence for cattle so they can keep their cattle in the appropriate fields. And, ranching is a good thing. It keeps open spaces in Wyoming, and if they manage their grazing right, it actually can help the habitat. So, we work with cattle ranchers and with the state Game and Fish, BLM, Forest Service. We've actually got 2, coalitions up in northern Wyoming that specifically focus on fencing, and that's the Absaroka Fence Initiative and the Bighorn Fence Initiative. And we're, active in both of those, and we appreciate all the great work they do, and we're trying to get more and more of that going in the state. And we're actually going to get a bunch more going in the Northeast because we have a biologist up there that works with private landowners and the public land, and a lot of that will be fence work. We did get just over $65 million from the Forest Service and the BLM throughout the West to do different habitat and fence projects. So, and that's in the next 5 years. So that'll also help a ton too. So we're still moving onward and upward and getting more and more stuff done.
Well, it sounds like things are looking promising, for the next few years of helping the habitat here in Wyoming, and that's a great thing, and hopefully we'll have a resurgence over the next couple of years as well with the deer population and making things smoother. So, you guys at the Mule Deer Foundation, like I said a little bit earlier, are always busy. And one thing that you have done the last few years is you've teamed up with Wyoming Whiskey to have those special bottles of Mule Deer Foundation whiskey that you guys will take around the entire state, and you just picked the new one.
Yeah, we've been doing those for this will be our 3rd year. And so we're doing the Living Legend series, which is based off a painting that Eastman's had done, and it's got Popeye, Morty, and Goliath. They're 3 famous mule deer from some winter ranges in Wyoming. And the first year we did Popeye, last year we did Morty, and this year we're on Goliath. So we're on our 3rd year. Next year will be our last year, and we're going to do all 3 on a bottle next year. But those will be available at different events around the state, and we really appreciate all the money those have raised. Last year it raised almost $25,000. This year should be about the same, and that all goes on the ground right here in Wyoming. And we're hoping to make even more in the future. And we appreciate all, the hardworking members and people who show up to our event and spend their hard-earned money to help support mule deer. I mean, that is so greatly needed, and every dollar we get, we can leverage for more and get more done on the ground. So, we are making money for good reasons, and we're trying to put as much on the ground as we possibly can.
And it's cool that, the folks at Wyoming Whiskey, you guys go in and you do a tasting, and it's really a cool thing that you guys are as involved in the process as possible.
Yeah, it's awesome. We went and I think there was 6 or 7 barrels of whiskey this year we chose from, and we picked the one we thought was the best and the most appropriate for Goliath. And, big thanks to Eastman's too, because, they basically purchased the whiskey from Wyoming Whiskey and donated in full to Mule Deer Foundation. So between Wyoming Whiskey and Eastman's, Mule Deer Foundation does not pay a penny for the whiskey. That way, all those proceeds go directly to the ground. So when people buy those bottles, there's not anything coming off the top. It just goes to the ground. So it's a really cool partnership between the three of us, and we appreciate both Eastman's and Wyoming Whiskey tremendously for doing that. And, they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. It's not doing them any on their end. It's just to help mule deer.
And, I love it because if you're in Wyoming and you have any interest in the outdoors, you can help however you can. And with Eastman's and Wyoming Whiskey, both being Wyoming organizations, it's cool to see a state that really supports the efforts of the wildlife conservation groups and organizations. So now, with that being said, you guys are also doing an event here in the Casper area at the end of July.
Yeah, on July 29th, Mule Deer Foundation is celebrating its 35th year of existence. We've been around for 35 years, since 1988, on July 29th. So we'll be premiering a film at Frontier Brewing in Casper, and we're also going to have a large gun raffle with it. So there'll be at least 7 guns in, under 3 hours. So it'll be a fun event. It's from 6:30 to 9 p.m. at Frontier Brewing in Casper. It'll be a good time, lots of good drinks, lots of firearms, and a cool 15-minute film to check out from Mule Deer Foundation, and just help us, celebrate 35 years and look forward to the next 35 years so we can keep doing good work for mule deer, throughout Wyoming and around the West.
That's awesome, man. It sounds like you guys have some busy times ahead. And if someone wants to get involved, if maybe you have always wanted to be a member of Mule Deer Foundation, you can go over and check them out at muledeer.org. And then specifically, you can go follow the Mule Deer Foundation of Wyoming on Facebook. That way you can keep up to date with all the information and all of these events that we talk about here. You guys always keep information on the Facebook page just to make sure everybody's alert.
Yeah, and we're always looking for volunteers. So when you go to muledeer.org/Wyoming, feel free to email me or call me or send us any type of message you want, and we will get with you because, we know some people don't have the funds to put a bunch on the ground, but they may have some time they can donate, which can turn into funds for the ground or just on the ground work. So we're always looking for people to help out.
That's awesome. Well, Sean, I appreciate it. And let's chat in a few weeks and see how things are going.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having us on, and we always appreciate Hookin and Huntin Outdoors having us come on periodically so we can let you guys know what we're doing in the state.
Awesome. Again, go follow them on Facebook, Mule Deer Foundation of Wyoming.
Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors with Drew Kirby. If you have a question, want to make a comment, or have an idea for a show topic, message us on the My Country mobile app. Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.